looking at here is the impending collapse. What's up, everybody? Welcome aboard to Bubba's Bottom Line for Sunday, June, not July, June the 28th. And of course, when we talk about the impending collapse, we are seeing so many similarities to the 2008 collapse and other collapses in history. But we're now seeing back to no doc loans, stated income, zero down lending. Those are not things of a healthy economy. Those are things that are telling you that the markets are in trouble. Now, again, I can't predict when, but just saw a week that was pretty wild and pretty crazy, but all indications of some very major problems that are going on. So we'll continue to watch, but when you see the PCI year over year inflation up 4.1% over the Fed target for 63 straight months, that's 5 years and 3 months. So this goes back to just after COVID. Okay. New homes dropping 7.3%. Builders struggle with rising inventory. So when you look and they go, now they're offering you to come in with no money down, that tells you there's a surplus of inventory. That is, if you look at the discount stores, that's how you end up with closeouts. That's how you end up with excess inventory. You have to get rid of it. So now they're willing to take the risk of a default in loan to get the asset off their books because they have too many unpaying or too much debt against the asset. So what we have is just another problem that we continue to ignore for now. Although we had a down week, the markets continue to ignore. But you add that in with private credit, you add that in with other areas of debt, other areas of problems of government, you add that into the entire situation, and that all adds up to a potential collapse. Now, again, we've had collapses before. They're actually somewhat healthy. The problem is if you go back to the Ben Bernanke era, he totally butchered the bailout of the banks. He really screwed the American taxpayer with that entire process. And of course, yes, we've had a big boom in the stock market. Unfortunately, most of you did not get the benefit from what's going on. So between the debt tsunami, which is really the Alan Greenspan legacy, yes, our condolences that he passed on, but he was 100. It wasn't like he got cheated out of anything. He was the original bubble builder. Ben Bernanke destroyed everything, followed by Janet Yellen. Jerome Powell, I didn't like him. He didn't do a good job. And hopefully Kevin Warsh will, because it seems now we're coming more back into the what's real, and let's not just make it available for the wealthy. Okay. Because basically low rates don't benefit the poor and the lower middle class. They benefit those who can arbitrage the money they borrow. Okay, so it's a problem that continues to grow. It's a problem with private credit, which is having trouble with redemptions, with overwhelming debt. We'll call it the new housing crisis. Okay, uh, but at the end of the day, okay, it's a problem. Okay, and tie into that places like the Virginia School District that are being sued over concealing gender transitions from the parents. I mean, when did we become this nation of so far separated and so far against, which again, has nothing to do with markets, has nothing to do with business, but it is somewhat problematic. You now have Trump threatening 100% tariffs on the EU over digital services tax. You know, we've got troubles globally. Okay, we don't have trouble. Globally, there are financial and economic troubles. We've seen it in China, we've seen it everywhere else. And of course, if you go back to Milton Friedman and some of the things that he talked about, okay, it's playing out to the way that he said. And of course, we've created this phony no good inflation versus what is good inflation, which is driven by demand and not by debt. And this is the problems that we see as we continue to watch. And of course, with this new housing crisis, you're going to see, and you're seeing it in Florida, Texas, Las Vegas, Arizona, and others. Okay. And those are four of the good states. So yeah, there's still some crazy stuff going on. But overall, when it starts when you start creating debt that will never be satisfied. And that's typically what we've witnessed in this no doc loan stuff, okay? And this is no money down, okay? And of course, we all know that you can't borrow your way out of debt. You can't tax your way out of debt. But of course, when the extremists run the government, that is some of the problems and the issues that we face. So here on the week of the 250th anniversary of this country, and often the failure of big empires. Obviously, I'm not predicting failure and hope that is not the case, but certainly economically, we're looking at some pretty ugly situations, and we'll talk about more of the extremists in our commentary. In the meantime, this is Bubba's Bottom Line. It is Sunday. It is June the 28th, and we'll stop out here for a break, and we'll be back with our market report right after the break. Bubba's Bottom Line. What's up, kids? I hope everything is well. I hope you had a great week, and of course, it was a wild one. But in the meantime, as we look and remind you of our sponsors and who help sponsor the show, and of course, our new product, the Daily Trade Finder, that didn't make a trade last week because of the lack of action. And one of the things we teach is, sometimes you don't trade. In the meantime, remember the Daily Trade Finder, and of course, our sponsors, Trade Your Brokerage, which is a brokerage firm. We have brokers and we have brokerage sponsors, and I have other brokers, so it's not just these, but these are the ones I prefer. A trader brokerage, $10 a month, flat. I mean, what more can you ask for? Saves me over $100,000 a year. You got Capital Trading Group, who's our partners on a lot of our commodity and futures products, and of course, the Joy of Mom, one of our own investments, but a great area and a great source for moms who looking for questions, whatever they, all kinds of information and help that they can go to. And of course, our high school program, which we try to help educate our children. And let's get back to Bubba's Online with our market report. Welcome back. It is Bubba's Bottom Line, and it is Sunday, June the 28th. And of course, markets had a wild week. I've seen something I don't think I've ever seen before on Wednesday when the Nasdaq was down about 400 as the bell was starting to ring, and out came Micron's earnings, and it went from down 400 to almost up 400. It had about a 750-point swing within 2 minutes, right at the bell. Okay, I can't say I've ever seen that before. And of course, Thursday, not to the same degree, but Thursday, right at the bell, we went from lower to higher at 4 o'clock Eastern time. Bang. It's 2 days in a row. Very interesting. But at the end of the week, the markets were lower. At the end of the week, the markets were down fairly solidly, down a couple of percent for the week. Look, again, I think the markets are overvalued. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to go down right away. But I think you've seen the highs. I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that the selling has begun and it's going to begin in earnest. If you look at a lot of the individual small issues that have gotten creamed and are down 40, 50, 60%, you could look at the massive amount of debt and all the other things that go on. I think that you're going to see that these are problems. Okay. And these will lead to problems. But of course, we've talked about warning signs here over and over again. And of course, most people will continue to ignore those warning signs. No? I'm telling you that, again, I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm still long. I'm just hedged. I think that if you're hedged, it doesn't really matter. And you look forward to these situations. But if you're just, if you're just buying and playing with a lot of this crap. I mean, again, we talked to you last week about SpaceX. Told you it would sell off a little bit. Now, again, it wasn't that we're negative, but again, you can't get this aggressive and markets can't get that parabolic. We've already witnessed it in gold and silver with the big dramatic sell-off you're seeing now. So I think those have both found some areas, but like there's a lot to digest about here. But based on our headline, which is we believe the impending collapse, based on the market action, I think there's a lot of problems, and I think that you should be very careful, and I think you should be cautious. Okay, again, I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm not telling you to jump, sell everything. I'm saying be careful, look for ways to defend yourself, and I think you'll be a much happier trader and investor when it comes down to it. In the meantime, as we look at the markets, the dollar continues to be strong. Now, that's another warning sign to markets because a strong dollar, because the dollar is a reserve currency, countries buy the US dollar for protection. Okay. That's one of the ways that they protect themselves. Maybe that's why the dollar is pushing higher. Euro currency continues to be under pressure. It did bounce a little bit late in the week, but again, we would still be a seller of the euro currency as we expect the dollar to remain strong. Uh, the notes and bonds had a little bit of a rally last week. We're still short them. We believe interest rates are going higher. And of course, we know that the Fed funds rate is hiking and is planning an interest rate hike. Bitcoin snuck below 60,000, came right back above it. It's interesting. I think Bitcoin, although I like it, I think it's got a chance to maybe go down to 45. Now, again, I'm not predicting. I want you to know that there's a real possibility exists, very much as you saw, some pretty big sells off and other things. Again, but we'll watch it closely and look for an opportunity. Gold looks like it might have found a bottom at 4,000. We're still long, okay, but I think it looks like it might have found a bottom at 4,000. Silver. I thought 60 was a good level, but it got below 60, did pop back to 59 on Friday. But I think that there's a chance probably you could see 56, 57 again before we see a rally. Platinum continues to be under pressure. We have no position in either silver or platinum. Copper continues to churn, but did break down below some key support levels. We have no position right now. We'll continue to watch. The grain markets continue to be in trouble. We are flat, the grain markets now. Again, look for a new place to enter. The meats continue to be very tough to trade, so we've kind of stayed out of the meat arena. And of course, natural gas just churning between 3 and 350. We'll look at it later as we get later into the summer and into the fall. And crude oil continues to get pounded and is now down under 70. Again, I think what you have to remember is that every subsequent announcement with the Iran war, we went to 120, then we could only get back to 110, then 100. And as we said from the beginning, when it was at 120, it was probably the selling out opportunity of a lifetime. And now we look for it to continue to fall. I would expect to see it get into the mid 50s. There may be a bounce obviously between now and then, but I would continue to expect it to fall with the glut and with everything else going on in oil. And this is Bubba's Bottom Line, our market report. We're going to step out here for our final break and come back with our market commentary. Well, kids, again, just a quick reminder, Daily Trade Finder doing very well, although we did not make a trade last week because sometimes it's better to observe than to trade. Also, the Trader Brokerage, Capital Trading Group, The Joy of Mom, and our high school program. And let's get back to Bubba's Bottom Line with me, Todd Bubba Horwitz, and go through our commentary. Welcome back. It is Bubba's Bottom Line. It is Sunday, June the 28th. And when extremists run the government, and, again, make no mistake, our Congress is run by extremists by everything that they do is more from the extremist side. And of course, it doesn't benefit you and me. It's not the people that we voted for. It is the extremists that are creating many of these very, very harmful policies from taxing you to creating debt that we'll never be able to satisfy, to creating situations such as in areas of the country where we have these crazy things going on. And again, this is the problem when you have extremists, which again, it doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat, to both sides, because they have so many significant advantages that more often than not, many of them do things to benefit them, not to benefit you, the person who voted them in, but to benefit themselves. And I think that, from they're trying to borrow their way out of debt to creating more taxes to taking more of your money, looking to do things because of the error of their way. You have to remember that government makes no money, and government makes debt. And if we're going to solve that, we have to change government or change who we have in that government. And again, it's something coming up into the midterms, coming up into thing. I mean, we're not going to be able to change overnight, but there's a lot of changes. We need to get rid of the extremist government that we have turned into, that is taken away and is no longer interested in the individual, but interested in themselves. And that is Bubba's Bottom Line. Todd Bubba Horowitz. It's Sunday. It's July 4th weekend, the 250th birthday of this country. I love this country. I hope you love it too, but we need to improve it. We need to do things. We need to get back to working the country instead of getting blindsided by those insiders in our country. Happy 250th. Have a great weekend, everybody. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. We'll see you back here tomorrow, obviously, with Bubba's Daily Update. And of course, next Sunday with Bubba's Bottom Line. And if I don't see you, have a great 4th of July. Thank you so much. We'll see you later, everybody.